So today we have Ian Smith in the house in Tempe, Arizona. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah,
good to be here. It's been a while. I think I was out here last year. I used to live out here in 2014 to 2016, so I always love coming back to Arizona.
Yeah. The last time we saw you was at an event in Scottsdale with Not Most People, I think. We saw you there for like a second.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Not Most People Summit.
Yeah, Not Most People Summit.
Probably about 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that.
probably. Time's just going by. It's insane.
It goes quick, man.
It's
It really
insane.
does.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of kick this off and like just kind of revisit how I first learned about you.
Sure.
Was during COVID. When everything started to get shut down, my buddy out here, Jeff Mahaffey, I wasn't his buddy yet. We are now, but I started to see him, outside his gym.
Self-made at the time.
Yeah,
right?
he was self-made. He had all the self-mades here at the time. And I started to see him outside with his shirt off talking to cops about, the gym being closed and everything. And
I remember.
I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then I saw really what you were doing, like going all in New Jersey and, keeping your gym open and fighting back against the government, which is insane. I want to talk a little bit more about that. But that really inspired us to start something called legalized lifting, because it was like, dude, supposedly we're in a health fucking emergency right now, and they're shutting down all the health clubs.
Don't do anything healthy. Just
don't do anything healthy.
Don't go out in the sun.
Don't exercise.
Don't
go outside. Just stay home, drink alcohol, smoke weed, and play video games. I'm like, this is freaking retarded.
Yeah.
So
90% of people bought that though.
Oh, dude, most people did. Yeah, and it was crazy. And I felt like it was a small amount here. It seemed like it was like us and Mahaffey. And then it was like you on the other side of the country. Mm-hmm. So then when you had your event, I forget which one it was now, but we all flew out there to go see you.
Veterans Outreach workout. We did that.
Yeah.
We did that in the height of the lockdown.
We did. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. We went out there. We stayed in Philly, just pretty close, and then came over. That's the first time I met Ray Cash, who we're now good friends with.
There was a whole awesome lineup of people there that everybody came out voluntarily too. Because it was a charity event. Mm-hmm. So. And it was like anybody who wanted to come that was a part of the health fitness industry, that was supportive of veterans, that, loved America, that wanted to stand and make some sort of protest, against the lockdowns. They may not have been affected somewhere else, but they came and contributed to what we were doing. And there was a lineup of some pretty awesome people there that day.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's Frisella, the Baileys were there, Rick Cash. You know better than I. There's a lot of great people there. Yeah. It was super cool. It was like a reunion of people that just like should have known each other. It was so cool.
That was a good turnout too, because that's not like my strong suit. Like I don't think I've ever planned anything other than like maybe dinner reservations. So I didn't really know how that was going to go. And it turned out awesome. But it was the people that made that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was great. Yeah, I drank a whole bottle of like apple whiskey with Mahaffey and Ray. It's just
sounds
amazing.
About right.
Doing push-ups all day long and just doing that is so cool. So yeah, let's people's memory is kind of like goldfish these days, and that era, that COVID era, I think for most people is like a forgotten thing, and if we don't remember what was happening, it's going to happen again at some point.
Sure.
So I'd like to kind of like get back, and if you could, now that we get to talk to you like at length a little bit about it, like what happened? Like you're out in New Jersey, you had Attila's Gym Belmar. Mm-hmm. They started to lock down like everybody else, but for some reason you seem to have it the worst. And the government kind of like sniped in on you, and they're like, okay, you know what? I think they were trying to make an example of you.
Absolutely.
So tell us what happened there.
My background, I've been in the fitness industry. I do a little bit of coaching now, so I don't do a whole lot anymore. But I started back in 2012 or so.
Yeah.
Worked in gyms, every position you could think of, and every corporate gym, small gym that was in the area. And eventually, I was actually out here. That pushed me into going independent. I got a job at the, I don't know if it's still the flagship location, the 24-hour fitness. I think it's in Tempe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not there anymore.
Not there anymore?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think actually TG bought that.
Yeah.
I think they have a location there now.
At the time, that was like their flagship Arizona location. And I had worked really, really hard and became assistant manager.
Okay.
And that lasted a week. And a dude and I was killing it too. And a dude in a suit walked in, and my background check didn't pass. And he was just like, "See you later, man." And that hurt, man. But that pushed me into, all right, I'm gonna do this myself. I like training better anyway. So I became an independent trainer, moved back to Jersey, got Relatively successful, relatively quickly. My business grew entirely because of social media. And at the time, social media marketing, I think, was much more simple.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's totally gotten incredibly complex and nuanced these days. But back then, my strategy was just show my clients wins. And everybody wants to show off their wins. So, every repost was, access to a new network. And I grew very, very quickly. Eventually had to get my own studio. That's where I met my former partner. He had a nutrition store in the area, not too far from the gym, actually, that we wound up buying, and was there for a couple of years, sort of maxed out. And we had the opportunity to open another nutrition store, and we opened it inside the gym. And within a month, we bought the gym because very quickly we realized this place was dead. Beautiful facility, needed a lot of love, had a lot of potential, very good location. And, it was just, we weren't going to make any money having a nutrition store there. So we'll just buy the whole thing. And we did. And it was like, we did it very quickly. And there was a lot wrong, but we kind of went in there knowing that we can straighten this out.
Sure.
And we did. And that was July of 2019. It was late 2019. I think it was June. And we were successful pretty much right away. There was a crowd in there that was very unwelcoming. It was just it's a very toxic gym culture. If you weren't one of them, you weren't really welcome. If you were a woman, it was probably going to be uncomfortable for you. So that it was just not a super welcoming place.
Dude, I hate gyms like that. And especially growing up, I was always the skinny kid that wanted to put size on and be bigger, and
gyms are supposed to be inclusive. You're supposed to bring everybody in no matter how little they know or, it's a place where people get better.
And a lot of them aren't. You walk in and you're trying to either lose weight or you're trying to put weight on. You're not where you want to be yet, essentially. Yeah. And you feel it. You feel the people looking and just kind of dickheads about it. And that keeps so many people away. And it's no, dude, it's supposed to get more people in.
Yeah. And the business is to help people. Yeah. It's supposed to be a positive, industry.
Right.
So we changed that around really quickly and off to the races. We were just kind of putting every penny back into it. And 9 months later, they told everybody to shut down. So we weren't even in business a full year yet. And that was that was one of the major reasons why we were no. This is no.
Yeah. We're talking about, we just started.
Yeah. We just started. I hadn't even taken a paycheck yet. And you want me to shut down that. And, we didn't, I'm pretty skeptical of authority. I've always been like that. And fortunately, my partner and I were very much on the same page. So we had our doubts and ultimately we chose to shut down originally because we just didn't know enough to confidently say no. We didn't, again, we don't want to do any harm. Yeah. But very quickly we started paying attention and we had a lot to do still at the gym. There was plenty of work to be done. And every day it just became more apparent that this was wrong. I'm driving to work down an empty highway, and I pass this giant mall and, all the big chain stores are open and I pull into my strip mall and the gym's empty. The dance studio's empty, the daycare's empty, the nail salon's empty, all these small businesses. And, it just didn't sit right. And then just the red flags just kept coming. When they passed that $2.4 trillion dollar stimulus bill, we really read into that. I mean, there was a lot in there that made it glaringly obvious.
It was all hidden in the middle too.
Yeah. And it's hidden among, legalese and just congressional language, we'll call it.
Sure.
But there were a couple things that were glaringly obvious. And the final thing that really set us off, and a lot of people never picked up on this one, everybody knew that the hospitals were kind of being incentivized, right? They marked it as a COVID death. But the big one for us, and that was obviously, glaring, but the big one was that the federal government was incentivizing the states to come up with positive tests. So for every positive PCR test that was produced by a state, there was a different payout per population density. I don't remember the number exactly, but I think in New Jersey it was $14,000 per positive PCR test. And that money was labeled basically COVID money. I forget the actual term for it, but there was no parameters as to where that would go, how it would be spent. And it's $19,000. And then, at that point I was well, what are these PCR tests?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I can read and, I can comprehend. It might take me 2-3 times to read it, but I'll get it. We learned, that the PCR tests weren't diagnostic tools at all. They were research tools. It wasn't, hey, you're sick. It's, hey, here's something you want to study, and we're going to blow it up and make a lot of it, which is why, if you remember some of the funny stuff during COVID, like Coke cans would come up positive.
Sure.
Because it just needed to find the smallest particle of COVID, and then, it's positive. So we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then at that same time, the news was saying, even if you're not sick, go get tested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was like where the light bulb turned on, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't take aspirin when I don't have headaches.
Right.
Like, this is the first time in history I could be sick and not know, and be showing no symptoms.
Yep.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. When you put that together, we were like, no.
That was one of the biggest things for me too. It's just like, oh no, but even if you feel fine and you're not sick and there's no symptoms, you might actually still be spreading.
Go get tested tomorrow if you're negative today. And it was like, oh, well, we see what you guys are doing.
This is how about
this is
I
a
just
heist.
go to work?
This is a heist. Yeah. And when you think about what $1 trillion is, right? And that bill was actually had room for up to $6 trillion to be spent.
Oh my God.
And there was.
It was like $2 trillion.
It was, well, the bill was written for 2.3 or whatever it was, but there was, again, some conditions in there where if they needed more, there was plenty more, and there was, and it was distributed.
Discretionary funds.
Yeah, exactly. That was the CARES Act. But when you think of like $1 trillion, right? Like it's kind of hard to conceptualize, but one that kind of just sent me off was $1 trillion. If you count by seconds, it'll take you like 55,000 years. So we're talking about insane amounts of money. And that was it. It was like, all right, you know what? We don't understand what's going on entirely, but we know that you guys are lying. We don't know why you're lying. We don't know who's in charge of this, where it's coming from, but we're watching small businesses shut down all around us. A couple weeks without an income as a small business, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
There's no slush fund in the back. These aren't public companies with millions and millions of dollars of assets. Small businesses, the way that they work for the most part is they do the work and they get through the week, month, and pay all the bills and pay all the employees, and there's some left to sit on, but
hopefully
typically not much, and business is hard to begin with. Business isn't easy even when business is good. Right. You have a competitive market, you have all sorts of changing factors, and then I've got to pay my bills and not do business. So, again, we didn't understand the whole thing, but we said no. And that was kind of the first step. We took about 6 weeks to open. We knew we were going to get a lot of heat for it. We didn't know what. But we put together a comprehensive safety protocol plan that we looked at what everybody else was required to do. We looked at some other things. We went so far above and beyond that. The goal was if you came in and told us to shut down, you would look like the idiot.
Right.
Because Walmart, you just have to follow the arrows, and stand behind the plexiglass. And we're taking temperatures. We have contact tracing. We have air filters that are specifically designed for this. Everybody's got their own. We had everybody with their own spray bottle. Yeah. We moved the entire gym so that no piece of equipment was within 6 feet of each other.
Significantly more than any requirements.
We didn't think that stuff was valid, but it was like, hey, this is what you're requiring businesses that are open to do. So we're going to do way more, and then we're just going to open. Right. You know what I mean? And we can talk about it if you want, and we did. We went to the local town. We said, hey, we're going to open. This is what we're doing. If you guys want to come talk about it, it's fine, but we are opening. Yeah. Went to the PD, said the same thing. And eventually, about a week before we reopened, we reopened 2 months to the day. About a week before, on Sunday night, I put out a video on my Instagram, which at the time, a couple thousand followers, fitness account that had been around for a while, but a lot of localized, followers in that area. And I just kind of set my phone up and did about 40 takes of this video where I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to say. And then I finally hit send on one of them and sent it. And I was like really nervous, like just putting it all out there.
Yeah.
And very quickly, the engagement on it was like way more than anything else I had ever posted. So, and it was good and bad. There was a good mix of grandma killers and you're a hero. Sure. A very, very clear divide. Excuse me.
Right.
But that was like one of those first moments where it was like, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. And the next day, got a phone call because we were never really like close. We were, the people were still in the gym training. I was training one of my clients and got a phone call from Washington, D.C. And I'm like, uh-oh. What the fuck is
Did
this?
It did it show up as Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. I was like, I picked it up and they were like, hello, is this Ian Smith? I said, yeah. They said, you own the gym in New Jersey? I said, yeah. They said, this is, guy's name is Alex. This is Alex. I'm the executive producer at the Tucker Carlson show. He's like, you want to come on and talk about it? Oh, yeah. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, when? He's like, tonight. And he's like, you need to be at the studio in like 3 hours. And I was like, all right, like
in DC.
Cool. No, they have satellite studios.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to a satellite studio in Philadelphia. You know, sat against the Philadelphia skyline backdrop. All these lights, they're powder in my face, and
tonight, I love it,
dude.
Yeah, like it was like right away.
Yeah, okay.
I remember because you're looking at a screen of yourself in a dark room, you know, and you can hear the show. And I remember like the monologue or like the intro kind of loading up, and I was sitting there. And like my heart started beating so hard that like you could see my shirt flutter.
Yeah.
And then I hear Tucker doing like his opening monologue and I hear him mention the gym and my heart starts beating so hard that I can feel and hear it in my ears. Like it was like thunderous. And then boom, we were in the interview and apparently I did pretty well. But the only thing I really remember from that first interview was like, he was like, it was towards the end of the interview. He said, you were on the most watched cable news show in all of history in front of millions of people. He said, and you are about to openly defy your governor's orders to shut your business down during COVID. And he's like, are you prepared to do that? And like, without hesitation, it was like, yes, just came right out. Most confident yes I've ever given. And then, you know, the interview ended and my phone was like smoking from the notifications. Like it was like vibrating, ringing, pinging all at once. And, you know, after I talked to some family and stuff, I had opened up my Instagram and I jumped from whatever 1,000 followers it was to like 40 within minutes. And that was, I was like, oh shit, we're really like,
damn,
like we're really going to do this.
Yeah, we're in it now.
So that, going back to kind of what you had referenced earlier, that is kind of what put us right in the crosshair.
Yeah.
Because Governor Murphy and Tucker Carlson never got along to begin with. Governor Murphy was actually on the show a couple weeks earlier, and Tucker Carlson had said something that he did was unconstitutional. And here he is again doing it again. So Governor Murphy saw the episode, obviously, contacted the Belmar Police Department and said, lock the doors or don't let them in the doors on Monday. So we got wind of that. The whole time we always had kind of people on the inside, whether it was like friendly cops, whether it was admins, whether it was clerks, you know, we were always being fed info. And somebody said, hey, you know, Governor Murphy's not going to let you guys in. And so we went in on Sunday night. We went in on Sunday night, friends, family, volunteers. We chained the doors closed with like big naval chains, put up brown paper on all the windows, and we kind of just waited. Really didn't know what was going to be on the other side of the doors in the morning. And like throughout the night, you could hear like more and more people in the parking lot. It was a pretty big parking lot. And you'd like kind of peek out and there were like some cars and then like there were more people and then it was like louder. And then you could see like one news truck, 4 news trucks, you know, like Univision showed up and like Telemundo. And I was like, oh man.
At any of these points, did you think Waco? And you're like,
well, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I don't know what's on the other side of these doors. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, so you're pinging from high to low where you're like there was a point where I looked at it, it was about like 6 something and the parking lot was full. And there was just like people out there and all you saw were like American flags and like, you know, Gadsden flags, 3%er flags. And it was like, there was a moment where I was like, holy shit, man, like the fucking cavalry arrived. Like,
yeah.
Like I mean, I was hoping like the local Fox syndicate would cover the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Fox Philly 29. Sure. It was like every national syndicate was there.
How was that feeling? Like you were saying, like super high, like this is bad. We got this, you know, we're leading something here. We're not sure what it's going to turn into, but we're doing what we want to do. We know is right. But I imagine there were also times where you're just shit.
The whole thing was.
What's going to happen? Are they going to bust in the door with a battering ram? Or
like, am I going to jail for this? You know, I'm somebody, you know, in my 20s, I did 5 years. You know, so the last thing I want to do is go back to prison for any reason.
Tell us how that kind of back and forth was in your head and with your guys.
You just kind of had to deal with it, man. Like we were fortunate in a lot of ways, but one of the most foundational reasons that I think we were able to achieve what we achieved is that my partner and I were on the same page.
Yeah.
We both, you had a lot of businesses where you had like one partner who might have been an investor and he didn't feel the same way as the guy who was doing operations or,
sure.
Whatever it is. But we were both like, no, absolutely not. And we made an agreement, and it was like, we're not backing down. Whatever is on the other side of this when we open.
Yeah.
We don't stick our toes in the water and decide it's too cold. Like we walk out that door and we don't ever shut them again for anybody, no matter what. And that sort of agreement was like the bedrock of being able to support those really, really high stress moments that would then come. I mean, walking out of the door was just the first of many very high stress moments. And you just kind of had to roll with it. And we believed in it. We truly, truly, truly believed in it. I knew that no matter what, that I had made the right choice, not only for myself and for my family, but for the members of my gym, for the community, for constitutional rights. It bothered me in more ways than just my paycheck. Like way more. So we just had to like tie to that. It was like, we had to anchor to something that, and it was like, man, I remember something my partner said, leading up as we were getting ready and just talking about the fears and concerns. And he had, I think 2 kids, 3 stepkids or something like that. So he had a full family, and he said, and he's a little bit older than me. He said, if I were to die tomorrow, he said, I would not be okay with what I'm leaving my children. Like in terms of the country, like not just his business being shut down, but like this doesn't feel okay to hand to my children. And I didn't have children at the time, but it was like, yeah, he's fucking right, dude. He's absolutely right. And there was something fundamentally wrong with this at the core. And although we didn't understand the depth and the ultimate evil of all of it, it was just that made us able to deal with the really, really, really scary parts. That would just come over and over again.
Yeah. And what you just said there was about the reason behind it was one of the reasons I was like, you know what, I'm going to be all in with this guy too. Because it would have been really easy to take a more generic approach and just say, fuck the system and just kind of be, annoying
bitch about it.
And just bitch and just kind of
loud on the internet.
Yeah. But you right away were like, no, we're doing this for our people that have chosen to come here to be healthy. We're doing this for a bigger reason because of constitutional rights. We're doing this because we know it's the right reason. And it wasn't just what some people might expect, like just kind of like no, I'm a right winger, fucking fuck you government. Like, no, like sure, you can kind of have that attitude, but you're very good at letting people know there's a bigger purpose here.
Yeah. And there was definitely a skill to navigating it, in terms of the way people looked at us, and we had that opportunity to get on the news, which, we weren't the only business that opened by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of stories that didn't turn out like ours, that they never got the support, or the state came at them in different, more effective ways or whatever it is. But after that Tucker Carlson interview, I forced myself to learn really quickly how to talk to these people and how to speak in an interview where it would not only get on the news, because just because they interview you doesn't mean it's going on.
Right.
Or they'll chop it into oblivion and destroy the message. So you had to be very good at because what was happening was very complicated. Like we've spent 15 minutes and we haven't even opened the doors in this story yet, so you can talk about all the complexities of it, but you had to give it to people in very easily digestible bites, because a lot of people didn't pick up on what was going on. And you're not going to hit them with everything at once. You just have to kind of get something in there. So I got very good at that.
How did you decide on that? Like, is that just something you knew instinctively, or it's almost like you had like a PR brain to it?
I guess it kind of just came naturally, like I didn't navigate it perfectly, obviously, but I knew that what they wanted to see was a raving lunatic.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like
that wanted easy for them to write you off.
And especially somebody that looks like me, like I don't look like I can, that has always been an advantage of me. I don't look like the smartest guy, and I'm not the smartest, but I can convey myself pretty well. And we were very calm, and we always made sure that we were happy no matter what our hearts felt. And that made people love the story and get invested in the story because they were able to relate to us. They saw 2, regular guys. I mean, we're we don't own a franchise. It was a single unit, two guys who drive, beat up pickup trucks to work.
Yeah.
So people, the average American would relate much more to us than, a screaming, angry lunatic, or, some hot shot, business guy. Cause I remember Mountainside out here, they fought it for a little while until it was no longer convenient for them.
Totally.
Yep.
And they never got the same sort of support, even locally there were probably more shirts from my gym in Arizona than there were people buying Mountainside shirts.
100%. Yeah,
because
sure.
we were genuine, and it came off very, very genuine. And that was, fortunately, I was able to kind of pick up on that. And I had a lot of help navigating it from some really good friends who helped out a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so for people that don't know all the details of your story, a couple ones I'd love for you to touch on was, I remember you guys kicking in the door once to your own unit.
Yeah.
And then I think another time you took the doors off.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So cause a lot of people are probably hearing this for the first time. So tell us about that.
The chain of events after the doors open, I'll try to condense into, just a quick timeline. Doors open. Great day. We kick those doors open in the morning. Parking lot's full, but most importantly, there's a line wrapped around the building of our members.
Nice.
Wrapped around the building. And again, talking, what you said, what was able, how did we manage those highs and lows? Story I'll always remember. And I try not to get choked up, but first guy in line, doesn't matter what his name is. Awesome dude. Veteran, Marine Corps veteran. 2 Purple Hearts. I think he had some other medals as well. Awesome dude. Yeah. Badass dude. Somebody who has served more than once and has had to go and see and do things that really no man should ever have to have. But when he was called to go and do it, regardless of what you feel about America's wars, he went there and he did it to protect his country, and he did it to protect his family. And when he came home, obviously men like that have to deal with a lot. We see that a lot. I know you guys do a lot of work with veterans and are in the veteran community. And these guys come home and they got a lot to deal with. And there's not a lot of services, at least from the government, that help them deal with that stuff. And, for him, in order to deal with what he was dealing with, he had 3 options. He could go to the VA and get medicated. He could self-medicate, or he could go to the gym and literally destroy his demons every day. And,
right.
And he came into our gym, as a member, and he was a dude that would walk in the gym 7:00 every morning, and just absolutely run himself through the ringer 7 days a week. He would leave an entire shade darker because he would sweat through everything he had. But when he left, he was able to go home. He was able to be a father. He was able to be a husband. Yeah. And he didn't have to drink, and he didn't have to go to the VA. And that's how he controlled his PTSD for years. And they took that away from him. He was the first guy in line. And he came up to us and he gave us a big hug, and he was like, man, you don't know how close I was getting.
Yeah.
And gave us a big hug, tears in his eyes. And it's like, man, now we can't fucking back down. Shit.
Totally. Because there's a few weeks.
That confirms it.
Right. There's a few weeks, I think, right? From when you did shut down originally to then.
Yeah, 8 weeks.
So he had 2 freaking months where he was probably pulling his hair out.
Yeah. And it's like, man, and that's a guy who's hugging us like he's like we're his hero. You know
totally.
what I mean? And this guy's a hero.
Yeah.
So the first day, everybody comes in at about noon. The police come to the front. They were in the parking lot. It was just Belmar police at the time. They were just kind of watching, making sure everything was good. They didn't really know how to handle it. I don't know if you remember when all the governors would do their daily COVID, this many people died today, and
right.
Whatever it was. But Governor Murphy told them to get in there and give us some citations. So they walk up. Crowd gets all kind of agitated. We calm them down. There's a video somewhere still online.
I remember
it's the captain of the police department. He comes up and he says, I'm here to let you know that, officially you're all in violation of the governor's orders. And everybody kind of gets upset again. And he kind of puts his finger up and he says, on that note, everybody be safe, have a nice day. He walked away. So he refused the order. He either retired on the spot or was let go. He was up there, you know, he had done his time, and you could tell that he was just like, you ain't gonna make me do this.
Yeah.
But obviously there's always a bootlicker somewhere in the ranks. And second lieutenant came up right away, gave us some citations. We took some pictures with them. You know, it was like they were throwing whatever they could. Ultimately we wound up getting over 90 citations. Violation of governor's orders, zoning violations, noise complaints, disturbing the peace, anything they could throw.
Violation of governor's orders is crazy. Like
So,
that's fucking wild.
There's a funny
to me.
story
Like that.
about that.
That'd be cool to frame though.
Yeah, like what?
Oh, I still got them.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
From the king, you
that's
can't
exactly what
fucking.
it was. So, you know, we took pictures with them being smart asses, you know, because what we had to do also to manage that stress was we had to have a little bit of fun.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it was like, and we never wanted to be the bad guy, but we also didn't want to never throw punches back.
Right.
And we knew that, hey, the cameras are on us. And while they're on us, we don't know how long they're going to be. Let's show how unreasonable these people are. No matter what we do, no matter how irrational and illogical their thought process is, and how rational and how, you know, how well we're going about this, they're going to do something to us. And all we have to do is just show people, you know, look how crazy these people are.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the more days the gym was open and everybody was just smiling and happy and working out, and it made them look, you know, dumber and dumber. So
Not dying of COVID.
everybody's just smiling and, you know, like doing their thing, flexing on the way out, you know. Hey, everybody's leaving with a sick pump. So, you know, regular day. They did the same thing Tuesday. They did the same thing Wednesday. They started to escalate. They went after our you know, people leaving the gym. They gave them citations. They started to follow people home and pull them over, harassing them. And then they started mailing the tickets because the news was there every day. And, you know, here we are again. Hey, you know, here's our violation of governor's orders. And I've been in enough trouble to know that I'm not afraid of a traffic ticket. You know what I mean? I know the difference between them. You know? So those weren't really, it was like, all right, whatever, dude, you know, like I'll pay you $36 in court fees at some point in the future to handle this. Thursday, we had a plumbing issue. They backed up the plumbing. The Borough of Belmar Municipal Works, we found them in the back of our building. Their official story is they were rescuing ducks. True story.
No kidding.
But we had sewage coming up from our bathroom, so we had to close. And we had a lot of help from small businesses. You know, everybody contributed in any way, but we had a lot of small businesses. Hey, we got cleaning products.
Yeah,
you know, we'll send them. Or when the news broke that happened, you know, we still had to pay, but they hooked us up. They came in and they they cleaned up the shit, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had a health department order shut down. So day 4, we had a health department order shut down. We had to close for that reason. Day 5, which was Friday, we totally ignored it. Regular day, tickets came in the mail. We're rocking and rolling. At that time, there was probably about 400, 500 people a day coming through from everywhere. Not just New Jersey, not South Jersey, North Jersey. We had people coming over from Philly. We had people Delaware, Maryland. I mean, as soon as we announced it, people were calling. There was people from they're like, hey, if I come from New York and I get a hotel, can I get a week pass? And we were like, no, we don't charge, but you can come on in, man. You know, and there were people making day trips and everything. So the gym was rocking and rolling. Friday night, we got a phone call from our attorneys and say that the sheriffs are at the gym and they're changing the locks. So late Friday, Governor Murphy submitted a court order, and he got the court order. So they took the citations we ignored. At that point, it was maybe 15 of them or whatever. The health department shut down, and Governor Murphy's executive order to shut down. And they went to a judge, and in New Jersey, the judges are appointed. They're not elected, so they don't answer to anybody other than politicians. And coincidentally, this guy was up for tenure that year. He did get it and a promotion. But he gave Governor Murphy his court order. And that's where all of the really tangible punishments came from, because there's not any real punishments for violation of governor's orders. It's a municipal.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. And I don't know about anywhere else, but in the state of New Jersey, it's never even been charged. So they don't even know what, there's no, the judges are like,
Yeah.
How do we sentence
precedent.
It's literally by decree of the king.
Yeah.
That's fucking what it is.
And there's not a whole lot of you can try to give me 30 days for but nobody really wanted to put their name on that either. So the court order now gave them some capacity to do stuff. So at that point we said, all right, we made our point. Let's kick it to the courts. Let's go. We had some faith in the checks and balances at the time. The executive branch is out of control. Kick it to the judicial branch. We filed a federal lawsuit. It got kicked right back. Coward of a judge didn't want to look at it because it was wildly unpopular. So he said that because we had pending legal action, criminal action in the state, that he didn't need to hear it until that was resolved, knowing full well it's not going to get resolved for who knows how long. Wow. So
imagine these guys are still out there now.
Yeah, no, they are.
Having to live with themselves.
I'm sure they don't have a lot of trouble with it. I really don't. There's certain people that are perfect for that position, and that's how they find themselves there.
Yeah.
So we stayed closed for a little bit, made the decision that we were going to break in, and still fighting in the state. We filed against the state at that point, but didn't have a whole lot of faith fighting the state in the state's courts, with the state's resources.
With judges appointed by the state.
It's we're going to try. I mean, we have to try this, but I don't have a whole lot of hope, at least not in the short term.
Yeah.
If you're going to win those battles, they take a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we said, while we're doing that, we were pulling 40,000 pounds worth of equipment out into the parking lot every day. 2 hand trucks and a whole lot of volunteers. We were walking plates, barbells, dumbbells, racks, plate loaded machines,
Damn.
out into the parking lot in the middle of June, July now. Still rocking and rolling. We had about 400, 500 people out there cooking in the heat.
Wow.
We were destroying our equipment too. It was just baking in the sun. And they just kept giving us citations. So we were like, screw this. Then we went back inside. And then that's when sort of the really scary stuff started to happen.
When did you get your business license pulled?
So from there, now you're talking August, September of still 2020. They went back to court, said, hey, these guys are in open violation of this court order. They picked their locks. They went back in, and when we first opened, we didn't want to do it, but we mandated masks because it was we just need one less thing to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't feel right about it at all. And we were like, wear a mask, take it down when you're doing your set and put it back on. And it was we were both in there and we were like, this is so stupid.
Yeah,
this is so silly.
It's
we know this
into
doesn't
a restaurant
work.
with one and sitting down and taking
exactly,
it off.
Exactly. And again, it's if you're going to take a stance, you've got to take the entire stance. You know what I mean? You can't cherry pick it because people then can say, well, oh, you don't think COVID's that dangerous, but you require it gives people too much opportunity. And it was just stupid. So Governor Murphy went back, and the judge then awarded him a daily fine of $15,976.94. I'm off on that one. I should know that number by heart. $15,000 a day.
Yeah.
And it was fuck them. You know what I mean? The first one at least. You're whatever, bro. Go ahead, do it. And then we were just open and we were rolling, and then 15 turns to 30, 30 turns to 60. Then you hit 6 figures. And again, a little bit of that fear sets in. I don't have 6 figures.
Yeah.
I had put my life savings into the gym.
Yeah.
So other than money that I was getting from personal training at the time, we weren't taking income. We didn't charge when we reopened. So it was okay, and then it hits $500,000. And you have to reassess again. And then, it hits $1 million and you get to a point where you're this doesn't matter. Keep going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, we would show everybody. And every time that they would escalate and whatever they did along the way, I would get on my phone and I would tell people about it. And every escalation would either piss people off more who were already pissed off by the story, or it would piss more people off. So that fine escalated, and then they took $200,000 from our bank account.
Mm-hmm.
That was some of our initial GoFundMe money and donations. Donations, buying merchandise, stuff like that. Because we had the nutrition store inside, and that was an essential business.
Mm-hmm.
So we were allowed to sell supplements. You just couldn't touch the weights if you came in, So they took all that money from us. And again, that was a perfect example. I went on and I was Hey, guys were broke. They just, Governor Murphy just seized $200,000. Gym's open. See you guys today. See you guys tomorrow. Tune in, tune in for whatever.
Tomorrow's chest day.
Yeah, exactly. Tune in tomorrow for, I don't know, if we're in jail. And that, again, pissed everybody off. But there was an entire community of people who either maybe hadn't been interested in the story, hadn't personally affected them yet, or they were mildly interested. The crypto community lost their minds and we probably gained 100,000 supporters from that one thing alone. And that was the trend the whole time until eventually it was the entire country.
Yeah, because as it kept going, people started to sniff. Like some people took longer for them to realize it was bullshit.
Yeah.
And so now, as it's going, you're consistent with it, and you're still doing it. They're ramping up the charges. They're taking your license.
And we're just still
boarding
working
the
out
doors.
of the gym, chilling.
Yeah. So you're just getting more and more people being like, "This guy knew from the beginning."
I remember when they took the money out of the bank account, because there was people that I was, we were working out with in San Diego, and they were like, "Wait, what?" And it was like, they've been kind of following the story a little bit, but that was like wait, what?
Yeah,
they just
sometimes
took their money?
Exactly.
Like, what do you mean? They can't do that.
They may have been paying attention, but then they were like, whoa, they did what? Because it just kept getting more absurd.
Yeah.
So after that, they kept finding us. We kept staying open. And we reached a point where they called a special town council or something, which was we found out later was totally illegal. There's no such thing. There has to be certain, legal proceedings in anything. But basically the sham meeting where they took our business licenses. They revoked our business license for our defiance. Some of the reasons were the people that were at the dollar store felt unsafe. That was a real reason that was stated.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because the dollar store, that's just like the pinnacle of clean.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Super essential too.
Yeah. So it was, it was ludicrous, as all of it was. They took our business licenses, and Governor Murphy reopened gyms less than a week later. So that was kind of his FU to us. So we said, okay, cool. We're still
open.
Yeah.
Gym's still open. I guess we're a rec center now. Whatever.
Yeah.
A nutrition store and a rec center. So it kept going. Got quiet for a little bit. They came back again, and then the next thing is they were coming to lock the doors again for a second time. And I was, there were a lot of businesses open at the time. We were all communicating, talking about it, whether you were, a brick and mortar small business owner or whatever. And there was a guy named Lou Uridell at Metroflex Oceanside, who was actually the first gym owner to open. He was able to navigate. We were all in different places, so we were all fighting the same war but different battles. What they were doing here in Arizona, whether they were using the health department or the police or the sheriffs or whatever it was always either different or a different combination of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So all we could do was kind of like talk to each other and, try to keep each other going. And I called Lou. I'm like, dude, they're coming to lock the doors again. And like without hesitation, Lou goes, take them off. And it was like one of those things where I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then I was like, let me call you back. And I went to my partner and I was like, yo, Lou said we should take the doors off. And he looked at me and didn't like say anything and like just kind of like walked away. And I was like, all right, maybe
that's not a good idea.
And like 3 seconds later, I hear like, zzz, 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 and the doors came off. And that was our next act of defiance. And we stayed open a total of like 40 some odd days and nights, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sleeping in the closets, having people man the desk while we took naps. And then they arrested us. They boarded up our doors. That's when we found out that the violation of a governor's orders charge, we were in the holding cell, and we were like, again, we were having fun. Because it was comical. So like our phone was like here, you know what I mean? So like I got my phone, I kicked it off, dropped it into a trash can, pulled it over, and like we're like on Instagram Live, in the police station. My partner was on his phone and he was on the Ring app because we had a Ring camera, so he's like talking to the police and like again, you had to have fun with it because you're not gonna laugh about it, you're gonna cry or bitch about it.
Yeah.
Didn't Louis have his cameraman come to jail with him or something? Like he got arrested with him.
Who?
Lou,
yeah.
Like he had his fucking content guy get arrested with.
That was our best weapon, was just show the absurdity.
Yeah.
So we went back and we checked it out, and like I don't know whose idea it was for like 1/4-inch plywood, but like obviously this wasn't going to stay here very long.
So seriously, we're power lifters.
Yeah, like this is
what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I mean, it's a friendly gym, but there's a lot of weight being moved in the gym, and you probably should have went at least like
3/4 inch.
Yeah, at least 3/4 inch. So we took a day off or so, and then we snuck back in broad daylight, and this was another one of these like hilarious moments. We wanted to kick it in, but we didn't want to blow the frame out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So we took a circular saw and we cut into the door, and we snuck into our own gym, like pulled another piece of wood over because police were in the parking lot.
Oh man.
We're like army crawling in our two grown men, like army crawling through the gym in the darkness, because we had to get behind the door and at least loosen the screws so that when we kicked it, it wouldn't blow, the whole frame out. So we did that. And then we kind of rallied the troops. And at that time, people cared so much that anything that I posted, they would repost anything. And it was like, hey, everybody come to Attila's tomorrow at 12. Come to the gym at 12. And we showed up next day. I had texted Tucker Carlson's producer and was like, hey, I'm going to have something for you. Like, just heads up. Like, you might want to save me a spot tonight. And Tucker was very good to us. Tucker, actually, after the first interview, he came on and he said to me, and he was like, first of all, he said, I'm wildly impressed. He said, I thought I was going to be talking to like some dumb meathead. He's like, your stuff. He said, the people that you're messing with are nasty. He's like, trust me. He's like, you're going to need as much media attention as you can. He said, this is going to be a long fight. He said, call me, keep me updated on stuff. He said, I will always try to get you on the show. And he was true to that promise. Had me on 12 times over 2 years.
No kidding. Awesome.
Yeah, because, when BLM came, everybody kind of forgot about COVID for a little while. And when this happened, so yet you ebb and flow in the media. And anytime, we were down and we needed to kind of come back up, Tucker was always there for us. But a lot of the media was. But awesome. Tucker opened the floodgates to that. So we, in dramatic form, we did our King Leonidas kick of the door. Yeah. Photographers there, newspapers there, everything. And, we just turn the lights on, turn the music back on, and we're open. And it just kept going and going. And eventually they, instead of civil, because the fines were a civil violation of your court order, they then went to criminal violations, which carried 5 years for all of our charges. So we had to fight that. And eventually it really started to slow down. Governor Murphy had gotten enough egg on his face that it was much easier just to bully us in court. There's a lot less to talk about, so people forget about it. It gets wildly expensive, and it slowed and slowed and slowed, and we were fighting. The state was coming after us. We were suing the state, so that's 2 courts. We were in the appellate division. We had municipal charges. We had those criminal charges, so we were like in 5 different courts at one point. Damn. Bleeding us dry. And again, the only reason we were able to get through that was because of people's generosity. Yeah. And like that, there was plenty of personal money that was put in there, but neither of us, by the time we got things at least normalized, there's still stuff going on. We had spent $750,000 in legal fees only. So for the average person, that becomes just wildly impossible. Yeah. It started to slow down, and then it was just, we're still open. We're still a rec center. Year 1 ends. We're into year 2. As year 2 comes to a close, gym is more popular than ever. We were having about 800 people a day on average coming through. Awesome. Still not charging any memberships. The township, the mayor called our attorneys and was basically like, how much longer are these guys going to continue this? Because we just kept suing the town. We would lose, we'd sue again. We'd lose, we'd sue again. And he said, like, they're impacting the town's budget. Like, I can't keep fighting these guys in court. Nice. And and awesome. Our attorney was like, so just stop. Like, they're not gonna, like, it's year 2. You think these guys are gonna stop? Like,
you shouldn't have told us that.
Have you met them? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
you definitely shouldn't have told us that.
And a week later, we had 2 business licenses back in the mail. And that was like our first major victory. Because we were allowed to become a normal business again. Damn. We've been in court ever since. We had a recent victory, small but very significant. So 80 some municipal citations between my former partner and I. And 4 years they went untouched. So they were in Belmar at first, but because we were suing the town, there was conflict of interest. They got kicked a couple towns over. And we would show up to court, nothing would happen. We'd show up to court, nothing would happen. And it's because nobody wanted to. And the further we got from COVID, the more nobody wanted to put their name on this stuff. And it wound up in another town. Like this guy's like a part-time prosecutor. Like he's like, and I remember the first time we showed up at this new court, our file's like this big. Yeah. And there's just like, it looks like a nightmare. Like there's just papers hanging out of it everywhere. Like if this got dropped on my desk, I would be pissed.
Yeah.
And he said that.
What the fuck is this?
Exactly. Like it looked like a shit sandwich. I mean, it was like the most unappealing thing you could ever look at.
Man.
Yellow papers, white paper. Like it was like.
Holy shit.
And he said that early. I mean, this was year 2 at some point, but he said that, the judge said, what do you guys want to do with this? And he said, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what Belmar, the township of Belmar wants to do with it. They won't return my phone call. I'm calling the state. They don't know. And over the course of 2 years, that went on. And I guess it was maybe about 6 months ago now. The judge finally had enough. She said, you've violated these guys' right to a speedy trial, dropping all of these charges with prejudice, which means they can never be revisited. Wow. And we got a bunch of charges for operating without a business license as well. And then we found out that the township actually doesn't issue business licenses for health clubs. It's a state issued license. So they illegally took a license they never could, dropped for that. So that was a huge win. I mean, those charges weren't scary, but the big win with that is it stopped any forward momentum, because that's one of like the legs of the chair on that court order, which was the court order was the thing that got us. Yep. So now, they're obviously not going to pursue it any further because there's still outstanding fines. I mean, there's probably 2 million. I stopped counting. 15,000 times a couple months worth of days. Not a couple months. A lot of months of days. So there was all that. So that was a huge relief, but that also now gives us the ability to go back and say, is this court order invalid? Because you base it off of something that's no longer there.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people forget. And they obviously forget because it's been so long. It's been fucking 5-6 years now.
That stuff's by design too.
And it's like, oh, you guys are still in court.
Yeah.
Like you're still fighting this bullshit, and even though everybody thinks, oh, it's over and yay and all this stuff. And it's like, no, we're still in court.
Yeah. And in some ways it is, obviously. But there's, and if you want to get to the finish line, we've got to go back and we've got to revisit the court order. Yep. And if we win that, then, we kind of get back what they took. But if you want to hold these people accountable, that's a whole nother legal battle.
Yeah.
So end of the story, if you ultimately reach that at least ideal finish line, is a decade.
I don't think people understand.
In some cases.
I don't think people understand how fucked up like lawfare is.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's brutal. Yeah. And that's what they use to scare people, because to the average person, that's a death sentence.
It's impossible. Yeah.
You can destroy your entire life getting wrapped up in a fight like that. And there's a high likelihood you may never win or see the end of it.
Yep.
Like you said, literally your whole life. This isn't just a couple year thing even. This is something that, especially if you didn't have all that support, like all that, however much money that came in from church,
literally impossible.
What would you do?
You at some point you have to tap out.
Yeah.
Or
and that's what they count on.
That's what and that goes for big corporations, government, any sort of big entity like that. Mm-hmm. They know that they can get away with so much, because in order for them to be held accountable, there's an extremely long period of time and a lot of money in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they know that they can push, and the likelihood that you're going to do anything other than bitch about it is very small.
Totally. Yeah.
Very, very small.
Yeah, dude. I can't give you enough props for that, because I know this. We are all still benefiting from the actions you guys took then.
Yep.
Because everything that just happened now with the election and all that, I think actually that's all connected.
It is.
Like it all came
It's
through.
An awakening.
It really is an awakening. Yeah. You were so far ahead of it, tip of the spear with this thing. So, dude, that's because it's been how many years now? 6, 5,
going on 5.
Yeah, 5 years.
We're coming up on 5.
Yeah.
March 2025 will be 5 years since the
Yeah.
Since the death counters started rolling over.
Right.
On the news.
I think you woke so many people up that carried into even now, just the election we had just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like you started all that.
I think it changed the whole like landscape too. Cause I think part of the reason why there's so much censorship on fucking social media platforms and stuff now is because of that.
Yeah.
Because you had
such a wildfire.
It was a wildfire of reach. And it was like,
if they're like, man, if we could have shut Ian down in the beginning and not let him talk on Instagram.
nobody would have known.
They eventually they muzzled me.
Yeah.
Like but for a while it was like wildfire. I mean, one of the coolest things there were so many cool stories throughout this, but I'm sitting in the office one day, probably stressed out. Package comes, it's a manila envelope, and I pull it out, and it's a newspaper from Australia. It's like the Melbourne Times or whatever it was, and the headline is anti-lockdown protesters clash with police. And if you remember what you were seeing in the news from Australia, like they were pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah.
The Australian cops were like macing old women, like hitting people with like rubber bullets.
Yeah.
And there's a picture under it, and there's a police force, riot gear out, and there's this guy standing in front of them, and he's waving this big Australian flag, and he's got one of our gym shirts on.
That's so fucking cool.
And those hats that we made that said "Make politicians afraid again."
Yeah.
And it was like,
oh wow,
oh man, like we started some shit.
You did. Yeah.
But that just goes to show, I always try to tell people this when I tell the story, and I wrote about it when I wrote my book. If you would have asked me before that all started, hey, you ever think you could have, an impact like that, whatever, I would have said the same thing that like every person tells themselves. And it's like one of the most limiting and destructive lies that everybody at least has told themselves at least once, if not for their entire life. And it's, I'm just one person.
Right.
We were just two guys in a sleepy town in New Jersey with a gym, and we had no idea who was actually watching us.
Yeah.
And we made the right choice. We made the hard choice. And those you don't know that choice is as big as it is when it's in front of you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it could have been very easy for us to talk ourselves out of that and still kind of keep the back door open. Sure. And no shade to anybody who did that, but like because we made that hard choice, people, it started so much. But those choices come across all of us all the time.
Yep.
And people have a tendency to like not want to step in front of things or whatever it is. Yeah. But we discount how important everything we do is.
Yes.
And that one choice inspired millions of people.
Yeah.
And it's just there was nothing inherently special about us. It was just we did the right thing and people saw it.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's a choice anybody could have made. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
Because it wasn't a fun choice. It probably would have been cooler to stay home and play video games. I would have been a lot less stressed out.
Yeah. Take the COVID loans and fucking all the
exactly.
bullshit.
Take my loan, my hush money and shut up.
Yep.
So I always try to remind people of that. Is it's like you can be a hero at any point. You know what I mean? Yeah. It doesn't. There's nothing that the people that you look at, somebody who's looking at me and go, man, I wish I could do that. You could. Yeah, maybe you didn't have a gym, but you're faced with those same life-altering choices that will alter your life, your loved ones' lives, your community's lives, and ultimately your country's lives. And it's every day you're faced with millions of choices.
And we've been
making the right ones.
Dude, exactly that. A ton since this election. I feel like we finally have momentum in our sales now. Yeah. And people need to like make it known. Like we need to keep it going. Like people need to keep talking that, yes, whatever it is. If you're excited about Doge or RFK or the war not happening, whatever it is, like anyone can have an impact. Yeah. Even if you have 500 followers, like just keep it going. Help feed that momentum, because if we become the silent majority again, the other fucking side is going to come back over. They're going to be louder. They're going to take it over. So like we have to keep going. And what you just said is perfect. Like anyone can make an impact. Everyone can make an impact. Yeah. Even if it's something as simple as
you're guaranteed to if you make the right choices.
Yeah, something as simple as putting on a shirt that says something like you're Belmore for everyone or Belmar for everyone. one shirt. I used to wear it. I had the dark, like brown kind of charcoal one. You'd see that and it was automatically like, you're cool. Yeah. Who are you? You know? And it was all over this place.
It became an identifier. Yeah.
It was cool.
I got a video. Yeah. I always tried to, communicate with people as much as possible. So I answered as many DMs and I made a lot of good friends and, met a lot of really cool people. But this one girl had bought a t-shirt and she sent me a quick video. Yeah. And she's like, hey, she's up in North California. She's like, hey, just here, taking a hike. I got my Belmar for Everybody shirt on. And she's like, I met a friend, and she pans to the side and some dude's wearing a Belmar for Everybody shirt. And she's like, we've been sitting here talking for like 45 minutes because we recognize, and like, I knew that was somebody that I wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
It's cool, and I spoke all over the country as a result of it. And I remember this one woman, I forget where she originally approached me from. She came up and she was like, I love everything you're doing. Like, you're so powerful. And I was like, she's like, I wish there was something I could do. And she's like, there's nobody around me that's doing anything. I said, I'm sure there's people around you. I said, get on Facebook. I said, like, there's probably something. She's like, no, there's not. And I said, well, then why don't you start something? And she was like, me? And I was like, yeah. And like, she didn't look like she got it. Like, she was like, okay.
Yeah.
Probably a year later, I see her at another event. I didn't recognize her. She comes up, she gave me a big hug. And she's like, hey, I talked to you, at such and such event. And she's like, I was telling you that where I was at, I think she was somewhere in California. She's like, that nobody was around. She said,
that makes sense.
I went home and started a Facebook group. And it was like Moms for Anti-Mask or something like that. She said, there's 470 members. And she said, she's like, we have meetings. She said, we show up at each other's school boards. And it was like,
fuck yeah.
Yeah. Like, everybody thinks they can't have an impact because they're so afraid of that period. Like that and it's no different in starting a business or anything else. Like, everybody's afraid of that period where you suck, or that like nothing's really happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And nobody cares what I have to say. Well, keep fucking talking.
Keep saying
it. Or whatever it is. And it's if more people understood how powerful they actually are, it would be, if 1 million people in this country adopted that attitude, we'd be somewhere else in a much better direction in just a couple of months, because you're going to impact the next person to do that. You're going to impact, ask a bunch of people if, you said you're inspired by what we did. How many people are inspired by what you have done?
Right.
And how many people are inspired by what they have? And but that's how it works. And you said the silent majority. That's the worst battle plan ever.
Totally. It's not good.
No, that's an important lesson, and something that can really be learned from those years is, if people didn't ultimately stand up collectively, we'd probably still be walking around, violating mask mandates. The few select ones of us in the beginning, or I'd have to take it down to talk to you guys real quick and put it back up. So
that's why we need to keep doing it now, because like, who knows what is going to happen for the next 4 years. I'm very optimistic, but one of the things that I love that you've always done is call out people no matter who the fuck they voted for, and no matter who they who they support, who they stand for. I've really been doing that recently. I have a guy that wants to come to Phoenix and fight me after yesterday.
I can't wait.
He's
come on out, fella.
And like his whole account, can't wait. His whole account is like all the stuff that I agree with too. And I told him, I was like, dude, I don't give a shit if we think the same way politically. You're a fucking idiot, And it was just it was over something different. But I like how you've always done that. And it's going to be ultra important going forward. I've actually started to tag him in some accounts. Maybe I'll do it for you too. It's like, I don't give a shit if we are politically aligned. If you're spewing bull crap, or if you're saying things that are completely different from what you're saying it actually is, that needs to be called out, because what people are dying for is truth.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, we need truth. And like, I don't care who's on these Epstein list and Diddy lists. It all comes out. I don't care. Even if there's someone that I think is great right now, if they're on the list, dude, I want to see the list.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important as we go forward to just like we've already planted our flag now, and like, just keep it planted. Don't go back to this stupid wishy-washy and like, I'm on team right or I'm on team left, and whatever they say I'm going to go with. Like, no, dude, I'm kind of like, I'm getting inspiration from you. I'm looking for people that are on the right now that are just taking advantage.
Yeah.
That are just spewing bullshit.
There's quite a lot of them. That whole COVID awareness, social media blitz spawned an economy of people who don't actually contribute in any meaningful way,
Yep.
but will monetize your fears, your concerns, your emotions. And yeah, I mean, I think falling into that tribalism of like, oh, you know, like the right, like never question your own people is an absolutely terrible.
That's
so
the
dumb.
Dumbest
You
shit.
know, like just because we're on the same side, in fact, I'm more critical of people I agree with and care about than I am strangers.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know, people ask me all the time, like, oh, you're so critical of the right. You know, you never criticize the left.
You don't need to.
You don't have to.
We've been, like everybody does that. And
Yeah.
we know that their policies are terrible and we know that they do crazy things. But what about this guy who, you know, we assume is on our team and has done X, Y, and Z? And, you know, people get mad at that. It's funny. But that's another one. People got mad at COVID too. So like there's always going to be that initial reaction because you're questioning someone's like comfortability. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because people need to understand that, like, man, if you really want this country to run the way it's supposed to, it takes vigilance.
Yes.
It takes vigilance. It takes honesty. You know, like you can never let your guard down.
No.
Freedom doesn't work like that in any situation, whether it's democracy or otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, take away all of the societal contracts, you know, and everything and all the countries.
Yeah.
Your freedom is your responsibility. You know, if you and your family are somewhere and me and my boys come along and we threaten your freedom, you don't just wish it away. You don't pretend like we're not there.
Yeah.
You know, you guys go protect the perimeter.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't ever sleep on that. Just because stuff's good, you know, you don't let your foot off the gas pedal with that stuff, because we didn't get to where we wound up in 2020 overnight. I mean, this was a series of inches. That back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, they've built this massive bureaucracy. The federal government was never supposed to be even remotely what it looks like today.
Not even the
Federal Reserve Act 1913.
Yeah, none of that. None of it. Like the federal government was supposed to have just a few duties, and that was protecting the rights of the states, keeping everything sort of uniform, raising an army. But other than that, it was supposed to be small. And Democrats didn't do that by themselves. Republicans didn't do that by themselves. You know, so it's fascinating watching people want to just put their feet up now that Trump's elected.
Yeah, no way.
Nope.
You know, and it's like, no, man, no more vigilance.
Yes.
Because now that you got your guy in there, you got to make sure he does what he says.
Yeah.
Because whether, you know, you can make all the excuses you want. He made a lot of promises he never did. You know, and yeah, you could, he didn't have this. Sure, whatever. But I'm still watching your ass this time.
Yeah.
You know, and guess what? I voted for you, and I'm still going to criticize you.
Oh yeah.
Because I want what is best.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do it, we're going to talk about it so everybody knows.
I think that's something that feels different for me this time around. Was the accountability seems like it's going to be a little bit more now.
It has to be.
I think a lot of people are starting to go, oh, hold on a second. If I voted for you and you said you're going to do these things and you don't do them, what happens? Nothing? No, fuck that.
Historically, nothing. Yeah,
historically nothing. I feel like there's a collective. No, fuck that. You're going to do it, or we're going to find somebody else to do it.
Yeah,
and that's the way it's supposed to work.
That's the way it's supposed to
work.
You've
You've got your 4 years or your 2 years or whatever you're elected for. Whether you're a city councilman, whether you're a mayor, whether you're the president, it doesn't matter, and it's not personal.
Yeah,
if you take those criticisms personally, that's not my problem. That's yours. You know what I mean? You were elected to do a job, and I would hope that you would be as critical of me if I was in that position.
Right.
That's the point of you can't be a leader and not be able to be criticized.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we say this in business all the time. Like, hey, it's great to get a compliment about something you like about the business.
Yeah.
I want more of the stuff you don't like.
Yeah.
Because that's the opportunity to improve.
Exactly.
And if everyone's just like, oh, what you do is the coolest, it's the greatest thing ever, and I have no negative feedback, it's kind of like, well, shit. There's got to be something I could do better.
Yeah, what am I missing?
Yeah. So
and the same thing goes for your employees and your partners.
Yeah.
For your friends, your wife. That's a good thing. You know, is to debate about that. And I see you have The Way of Men here, and there's a chapter in this book. I always organize it wrong. No apologies, no excuses, and no arguments.
Yep.
And the premise of the chapter is that you don't apologize to people. These three things are reserved only for people that you care about. You don't apologize to people that if I don't care about, what am I going to? And we have that world where it's like everybody's so afraid of being judged by people they don't know. I don't give a fuck what you think about me.
Right.
I'm not going to apologize for who I am to a stranger, because if I apologize to you, it means I care about you. It means you're somebody that I love. You know what I mean? Same thing. I don't argue with you. I'm not going to argue with somebody I don't care about.
Yeah.
If I'm arguing with you, it's because I care about what you think. I care about what I think. And at the very least, I want to understand why you think that way.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell so many people is stay curious and think critically. And if you do those two things, like chances are you're going to make a better informed decision about whatever it is.
10 out of 10 times.
I 100%, I've been asking this a lot. I've been trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, especially when someone thinks to the opposite of I do, of like on the left of like a political thing. I'm like, I don't want you to just tell me your soundbite because I'm trying to give you a better soundbite of what I think. I want to know why you think that way.
Yeah.
So please explain it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times
Most
they can't.
people can't,
you know, like, but a lot of people on the right can't either. Like, why do you
it's
agree?
no different.
Why do you want this?
No
and it's just like, I don't know. Trump said it, and it's just like, well, cool. I'm glad you voted the way that I wanted you to vote, but it's like I'd rather you like really understand.
I also
these things
need you to
deeper.
be a critical thinker.
Yes, you know, so you got to stay curious and you got to stay critical about everything.
Yeah.
Everything, because we can fall into groupthink just as much as the left can, just as much as any group of people can.
It's a healthy perspective to doubt anything that you've been told.
Yeah.
You know, and it's pretty funny. You know, if I watch something on the news, I don't believe it.
Right.
But if I'm interested in it, I'm going to go find out. Let me do a little bit more research.
Yeah.
They said this is true. All right. Well, you know, let me check on that. And I'm going to start from the position that I don't believe what you're saying. And I'm going to work my way towards the truth. And if I get there, great.
Right.
But we've fallen into this very intellectually lazy sort of place where if it's like, oh, well, it was on the news, so it has to be.
People's research is Google.
Yeah. And then they work their, you know, they accept, you know, what they want from who they want as the truth. Yeah. And that's just it. And it's like, nah, man, I don't care if you're my friend. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't believe what you're saying. And if I ask you a couple questions and you clear it up for me, then I believe it.
That's one thing I like about X is instead of like looking at whatever news station, I don't believe the news either. But what I like about it is if on X, if you follow however many people, if something is happening in the world and there's a headline on Fox or CNN or whatever, you go to X, I can see right away what 20 or 30 people that I tend to trust think. And then it's a lot easier to make an informed decision. Okay, is this actually happening? Or like, is this real? You know, because if 10 of those 20 people that you trust are like calling BS on it, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So you move a little bit closer.
Let me go a little closer. I mean? But if everyone
now
is
I know
like,
what direction to go in. Yeah,
exactly. But you can figure it out so much faster. That's what I like about X now.
And that's not just even like a political thing. I mean,
no,
like
that's
if I came to you with a business idea and said, dude, I got this idea, we can make like $5 million this year, you're probably going to think I'm lying first. You might ask me some more questions, but you're not going to be like, all right, what do I need to do?
We're selling masks to the state of California.
Yeah, like you're going to be like, $5 million?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're asking how, it's because you probably are like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I'd like $5 million, but that sounds a little easy.
Yeah, it's like prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if I give you some crazy answer, you're like, but if I say, hey, listen, come on, let's meet for lunch, and I come to you with a business plan, you're going to go, okay.
Yeah.
Can I take a copy of that and go home and you're going to do your homework and you might call me back and say I'm not interested, or you may work your way towards, hey, I like this idea.
Yeah.
You know, but that needs to be applied just across the board.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like even when you go to school, you know, look at what kids come out of school and they don't know how to think for themselves because it's like, oh, well, the teacher told me it was true.
Right.
You know, it's like,
no.
I mean, I'm glad I didn't pay attention in school. I was just,
but
I missed a lot of that propaganda because I was like a bad student.
It was so funny. I don't remember whoever posts, doesn't matter, but they're like, this is what the election map would have looked like if only people with degrees would have voted. And I was like, this isn't the flex you think it is.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the flex that you think it is.
Yeah, that's like I'm going to repost this, but not for the reasons you
I'm totally reposting this. You're absolutely right.
That is so funny.
That's a perfect example of it too. You know, you got people who think because they get good grades that, you know, they're infallible.
Yeah.
And then they wind up trusting all these institutions and stuff that wind up being very, very fallible, if not rotten.
Oh, for sure.
To the core.
Yep. And that are run by people without college degrees.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like some people will get this concept and they'll be like, okay, cool. I can apply this to kind of like simple things.
Yeah.
But the world is not simple. It's very complex, you know, and as we are looking at like wars and we're looking at conflicts and we're looking at tariffs and we're looking at these things, that cannot just be a headline understanding. Like a lot of these places, especially when it comes to like war, like over in the Middle East, that shit has been going on for hundreds or thousands of years between all sorts of different generations of people and administrations and all these
you come in and pick a side
and all these things. And it's like,
anything.
because one guy said this is what I believe. And it's like, dude, there's just so much more. And a lot of it is like, I'm glad that there are people that are invested in learning more about it because I don't have the time. I got a business and a family and a life and all this stuff to do. And so like, that's why like sometimes I am totally fine not taking a stance on something because I know I'm not informed enough. You know, so
and people hate that too.
Oh yeah. I think it's good. Yeah,
like I have no idea.
Yeah. It's good to be able to say like, I don't know. You know, and like when it comes to
I'm not interested in this either.
Yeah,
you know, people will be like, well, why not? And
like, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't affect me right now. Like, look at my schedule. I don't need to. You know what I mean? I don't have the brain capacity to try to figure out the Shiites and all this kind of stuff right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's why, like, one of the things that I like, you are going deeper into some of these things, and like, so like for me, there's one that like I was just telling him the other day that I'm like, I am perfectly fine saying I don't know about the Israeli type stuff that's happening. And I've been watching a lot of it you're saying and Dan Bilzerian is saying and all this stuff, and it's going against what a lot of politicians say and all that. And I'm just taking
what the right is saying.
Yeah,
too.
A lot of what the right is saying. And I'm just taking it in. Because that is such a complex thing that I'm like I'm not voting. I didn't vote this last time around based on Israel.
Yeah.
I voted on many other things. I just love how we got like
ultimately like your daughter.
You have to vote about the issues that are right in front of your face. I mean, you have to consider those other things, but you know,
but they're weighted much differently than things that are affecting
as they
us
should
right
be
now.
too.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
And you have to win. You have to be able to win smaller battles and be able to like have a position to care about other things. Right. If things are so bad where you're at, and life has become so difficult because of policies that are right in front of your face. I mean, like how invested in something can you be
on the other side of the
planet? If you're the average household in America these days, that is, you know, a median income household. Yeah. You know, these people are like, dude, what is happening to, you know, my life?
Right? We were just talking about this on the way here. Actually, Justin was he was at the gym with his wife. And he was talking about this like crackhead outside the window folded in half, like scratching his leg and stuff. I'm more worried about that than I am
the drug epidemic and the homelessness epidemic.
Far more worried
right
about
here
that.
in my backyard.
Yeah, this is the first time I took my wife to this gym because she just got a promotion. She's gonna work from home now. She's still doing what she does, but it's awesome because now we get to like spend a lot more time together. So I take her to the gym, and the whole time that we're in there, we're doing legs today. It's all glass. You can see out. This guy, like you said, I thought he was like a little kid almost because he's folded over, picking his leg and like doing all this stuff and playing with, you know, cleaning his hair and changing and all this stuff. But he stands up. He's taller than me. And it's like a full grown adult. I'm just like, this person is not from this area. Yeah. You know, like what is going on? That is much more concerning to me than something that's happening on the other side of the globe. Yeah. You know, it's wild. But it also made me like, we need to go to another fucking gym. You know, like this is just like, it's close to the house.
Guess we're going a lifetime, honey.
Dude. Yeah, I guess we're going a lifetime again. Damn it, you know?
Yeah, but you know, even with that stuff, it's so funny because, you know, through all the COVID stuff, I became at least for a while, I was the darling child of the right. I mean, these people loved me. And I mean, I've probably done 200 speaking engagements over the last, you know, couple years, probably more. Yeah. Big, small. I mean, I spoke on behalf of Trump at the Million MAGA March. I spoke on January 5th. I was supposed to speak on January 6th. I've spoken in front of just a couple people at a school board.
Didn't you do CPAC?
Did CPAC. Yeah. I mean, and I was one of the headliners on this tour that kind of went around America. And after October 6th last year, or October 7th, whatever it is, I just had some questions because it's like right away, hey, the politicians want to go to war again. Yeah. And I remember this back when the Ukraine thing broke out. I was running for Congress at the time.
Right.
And my position was wildly unpopular then too, because everybody said we had to come rush to these people's aid. And I was like, I don't think we should just get involved in this. Right. My stance has always been very anti-war. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends who have served. I have worked with a lot of veteran organizations. We work with military in all of my companies. And I just don't want to see any more of our men go play in the sandbox,
Same.
Because what do we get? They say we get national security, but like, how do you measure that? And it's like, usually, when we went, after 2001, September 11th, we had to stop weapons of mass destruction. And, it turns out they weren't there. Mm-hmm. And we had to go into this other place for that. And it turns out, that the threat really wasn't there. And, we're just going to go in. And then 20 years later, we're still in these places. And you look at the effects that these endless wars have on the men in this country. Yeah. Men pay, well, everybody pays the price for it, but we get a bunch of men who should probably be doing something else in life, and they come home broken, whether physically, mentally, spiritually, and like that has a reverberating effect through society. Yeah. For every man that comes home broken, that's one less functional member of society that we have, and maybe that guy has a family, maybe he's got children, maybe he's got a wife, and maybe what he had to go do has messed him up so bad that he can't do that to the best of his abilities. And I don't care what war you want to talk about. His most important job is that family and his community. So when the Israel stuff broke out, my position was, I don't want to get involved in this. And not only, do I not want to get involved in it, but I'm skeptical of how we're getting into it because every other time you guys have lied. Yep. Yeah. And I do like to be a little bit of a dick, when I when I when I tweet, and I made a joke and I was like, it's crazy that the most militarized, highly secure border in the world was circumvented by dudes on hang gliders and industrial fans. I believe that as much as I believe that, some dude who took a couple courses in flying was able to direct bullseye into the Pentagon without getting shot down. Yeah. So it's like, again, just I'm doubting it. I'm going to start back here. And if I can find the truth, I will. But I'm not going to pretend just because the guys that are on my side of the aisle are banging the war drums that I'm going to support this. And I mean, I got a lot of blowback for being anti-war when it came to Ukraine. Oh, you're a Russian sympathizer because I don't want to go over there at all. Somehow I support the other side too. And it's like, I don't care about either of them. Yeah. The Israel one was very interesting because it was, it was like I had just said the most unspeakable thing ever. I got canceled from 2 sponsorships within a week for divergent ideas, they called it.
Which makes you a little bit more skeptical.
No, it absolutely did. And these are people that used to jock my shit. Yeah. I mean, like, they were like, dude, just rep the company. Like, dude, we got a great product. We'll pay you $2,000 a month. And I had long-standing working relationships with these people, and overnight it was gone. So yeah, exactly. Now I'm like, let me ask. I got another question.
I got a lot of blowback on this when I would start asking. I'm like, why are they our greatest ally? What makes them our greatest ally? Yeah. What makes Israel our greatest ally? That was my only question. It was
people will get upset,
and it was fuck you, and I'm like, oh, good, fuck you. All right, that's why.
Yes, that settles it.
Yeah, greatest ally. I'm like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, and stuff like that's weird because it's like the people that are not all, but most of the people who are really, really for that are never going to do that, or they're never going to go there.
No, not at all.
They're not the guys, getting shipped over there, doing 2 tours, 3 tours, 4 tours.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those guys are in support of it, and, whatever. That's fine. You believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll accuse you of being anti-American for that.
Yeah.
For not wanting to support a war in a place I've never been. And quite frankly, I probably won't ever go.
Does one of those guys have an eye patch by chance?
Yeah.
I even have this theory. I even have this theory about like these other parts of the world that they might not even
Buddy
exist.
Crenshaw.
Like, yeah, exactly. But I have this theory that like, we can't trust what they say about something that's happening
here
in New Jersey or here.
Precise.
So now we're talking about something in a place that frankly might not even exist. Like this is kind of my little conspiracy.
I mean, it's far enough away that it basically doesn't.
It's like you're telling us these things about these people that we have never seen, we've never heard from. Like we don't, and it's just like, to me, it's just like we are not applying nearly enough curiosity and critical thinking, which is what I was just saying about everything.
Yep.
So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to step back and I'm going to do my business, my family, my thing, and just
which should always be
and do what I can.
Always.
Yeah, if you go follow the nightclub pages for the nightclubs in Kiev, they're all popping. They're all popping.
Meanwhile, a generation of men die.
Yep.
While a generation of women over there become more degenerate too.
Yep.
That's there's all these consequences that happen as a result of this. So you have, they've killed a generation. They've sent a generation of young Ukrainian men into the meat crimer. Not even young.
Yeah.
They're taking guys 40 and older too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then you've got the inner
cities,
cities, which is funny because it's weird. The inner cities are always so overwhelmingly out of touch with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you guys are partying but they tell us here it's so important that we support.
Send more money.
How important is it if a large portion of the country is out drinking and partying every night?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and again, you ask these questions and people act like you've said something offensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, dude, I have a right to question whatever I want. It's my money.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, until you're not taxing me on it, fine.
Yeah.
And it's a staggering amount of money, especially when we need money here for all sorts of things.
When you're looking outside your gym window and Phoenix can't figure out how to fix the homeless problem.
Yeah, when it's 2 months later and North Carolina still looks worse than Kyiv.
Exactly.
And
you could find
it's like, dude,
10,000 more glaring examples of it everywhere.
Yeah, we're sending
$86
$86 million a week to the Taliban.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing that? As somebody who's served in those wars, like, why are we sending $86 million a week to the Taliban? And asking that question.
Whose idea was that in the first place?
So Sean Ryan asked that question, and he got shit from people on the right.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, I just want to know why we're sending money to the Taliban. Like, this is bullshit. Like, why are we, like, what? And it's nobody can answer the question. It's just, fuck you.
Everybody gets very
shut up, get in line.
There's always some, and it's funny because if you look back at like the COVID stuff, you look at the BLM stuff, you look at the Ukraine stuff, the abortion stuff, whatever it is, it's all a bunch of like emotional switches that are being pulled by like the man behind the camera or the curtain. But the same. It's like different stuff, but it's the same things that they do. And it's the same mechanisms. The media gets involved. Big corporations get involved.
There's a saying, there's a rhythm.
There's slogans, and then there's all these like very non-organic movements that pop up.
Yeah.
But it's the same mechanisms every time. They just affect different people.
Yep.
And you have a responsibility to not let people emotionally manipulate your decision making.
Well, you nailed it. It's the emotion.
If
your emotions are pulling you into something, that means you probably haven't thought critically enough about it.
Yeah, just take a step back and
just chill
and breathe.
A minute.
You know what I mean?
For like anybody who's skeptical, right? Listen to this podcast. Someplace that you should start. Here's a really easy video that you can start with, and it's 1986, I believe. A guy named Yuri Alexander Bezmenov, he was a former KGB agent, said in an interview, this is how you subvert a culture. Mm-hmm. And he gave you the 4 steps on how to subvert a culture. And if you just go watch that video with an open mind, I know that's hard for a lot of people to have the open mind. But just go watch the video with no left or right or anything like that, but just go watch the video and think about how the last 20, 30, 40 years have gone in this country.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, he's telling you the game plan.
He's telling you the game
plan. And it's a very real one. And, it really just comes down to like, you have to be personally responsible for, like, you're in control of your life.
Yeah.
And, and obviously the first thing that you should focus on is yourself, right? You got to make sure that you're good.
Yeah.
And outside of that, you make sure your family's good. If you're good, your family's going to be good, and if your family's good, chances are your community's going to reap the benefits of a strong family in there as well. Cause it's that same effect, the dad down the street sees you killing it, right? He sees you opening your own business. He sees you're in good shape. He sees you outside playing with your kids all the time, sees you doing all these things. Chances are that's going to have some positive effect on him. And and then we can care about the world beyond that, right? But we've got it mixed up to where it's like, you've got to care about this thing that they're telling you to care about.
Yeah.
You've got to have an interest in BLM. If you don't have an interest, then you're a bad person.
Post the black square.
Yeah. I mean, that was a perfect example of it. Dude, I mean that at that point I had just blown up, right? Like I had just kind of gotten that big initial surge. And there were people who supported the gym who tried to pressure me to post that. And I remember being like, what the hell is this? Again, I saw what had happened. I was like, oh, that sucks. That dude died. Like, I didn't know too much about it. Hey, I'll look at this a little bit more, but like, it was immediately, there were people who didn't want me to take, or people who wanted me to take a stance against it, and people who wanted me to take a stance for it.
Sure.
Very, very, and if you didn't satisfy either of those things, I'm unfollowing you. I don't like you.
Yeah.
You're a bad person.
Yeah.
And people would try to kill me. Well, I support your gym. Okay.
So some dude died in the ghetto.
All right. Stuff like that happens every day, right?
Oh,
and the only reason you're upset about it is because somebody flipped that emotional switch for you.
That's it. It's just another switch.
You don't care about the 2-year-old who got shot down the block from you or in the city near you.
Right.
You care about the guy that's on the news.
And there's a lot more switches coming, and we don't know what it is.
Yep.
So just watch for things like that.
You've got that responsibility to be bulletproof, to not let just anything in your head.
Yeah.
Because if you choose the wrong thing and you wind up supporting these things, and there's all sorts of unintended consequences that come from that. Look at what happened to the support with BLM. Nationally, you've had a decimated police force.
Yeah.
And a police force now that looks very different in terms of their makeup.
Right.
You have a lot less people who are interested in protecting and more who are interested in enforcing rules no matter what they are. And it's because they forced but that is a result of blindly going into that and following that. Same thing. Blindly going in and following Ukraine and giving these politicians the sort of authority or at least lack of resistance.
Right.
How many billions of dollars have we spent so far?
Almost
and again, what have we got out of it? Nothing.
I haven't seen anything different.
Literally nothing.
Still a homeless guy folding in half in front of the gym.
But that's a huge part of it. It's like, again, going back to the impact that you have on the world, just by you paying attention, doing the right things, really caring about what is true, not just what is popular, not what's easy, not what's convenient. And that doesn't just have to be in politics. That goes for every day.
Yeah.
Every single day, whether it's in business, whether it's in your family, you do the right thing. And it's like, politics just seems to be this really weird place where people have trouble with that.
Right.
And that's, I hope to see that. You are seeing the tide shift on that. But that's what, I mean, that's the only way democracy works.
Yeah.
You can't have a bunch of idiots.
No.
Like you've got to have people who are like, you can't have a bunch of gullible, emotional idiots.
Right.
And our founding fathers even warned against that.
Yep.
I think, I'll butcher the quote, but I think Jefferson said a republic if you can keep it, and that's, you look back in history, you look back when people start putting their feet up and assuming that politicians are going to do the right thing, or they get invested in this tribalistic thought, societies tend to fall apart and the governments tend to get wildly out of control. Look at Rome's a perfect example of it, but there's dozens and dozens of them where in the beginning people were more militant, they were more involved, and as Rome rose, it's the old, strong men create good times, yada, 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 and around. Like that cycle doesn't have to happen.
Right.
If strong men create good times
and
in good times, strong men just do the fucking right thing
and keep it going.
You don't have to circle back down to, good times create weak men. Like that's totally an avoidable cycle, but it takes the efforts of everybody collectively to make that happen
as individuals. And, my favorite saying out there, you got 2 first form things on your clothes right now is personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Like all of this comes down to, if you're worried about the world, the Middle East, or the economy, or whatever it is, if you take your personal excellence to the next level, your personal responsibility to the next level, and take it personally and make it your mission to be a better man and a better woman and be better at being a man, all these different things that require you to accept that, hey, it's on me.
Yeah.
If you actually do that, all those other things benefit. Your circle benefits, your family, like you said, then like that is how we collectively get better. But it has to be the individual.
Yeah. Imagine if 10 million people did that tomorrow and really took just their life seriously. Dude. I think that's an all-encompassing way to say it. Yeah. Take your life more seriously, get in shape, get healthy, get financially disciplined, blah, 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 all these things. Because usually all those personal things, like when your life's sloppy, they hold you back from being able to navigate the bigger, more complex problems. If you're living fucking paycheck to paycheck and you're financially reckless, you don't even have the bandwidth to do anything. So it starts there. Your personal health is another thing, and so on and so on. And you look at the most successful people in anywhere, and the most sort of like even keeled people. And these are people that have done a tremendous amount of work on themselves, who have continuously refined the process of who they are over and over and over and over again. And you eventually get to a point where you become wildly impactful in everything that you touch, because whether or not people will admit it, everybody sees it and everybody feels it around you. When a guy like Andy Frisella walks into the room, he lifts everybody up immediately. And that's personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion is his concept. But you see that in the culture at First Form. You see that even in the culture around St. Louis as a result of the culture inside First Form.
Yep, right.
These guys are out there doing trash cleanups in St. Louis pretty much every month. Yeah. They're out there doing events. And these aren't things that bring money into the business. Sure, I mean, they benefit in the long run everybody, but these are things that cost money.
Oh, yeah.
And these are things that are typically not convenient to do. You're getting up on a Saturday morning, you know what I mean? And you're doing all these other things. But that's a perfect real world example. I spent a lot of time in St. Louis, and there's a lot of issues in and around that city.
Yeah.
And just First Form alone, under the leadership of Andy and Sal and all these guys, pushing that culture primarily for themselves, first and foremost, and then expecting it of their employees, radiates outward beyond.
I think a really cool example of that I don't know if a lot of people caught on to it, but when the First Form energy drink first came out, and it was just in like the QTs or whatever around St. Louis, even if somebody didn't know who Andy Frisella was, they were putting videos up with the energy drink, and they were turning the label straight when they were at the fucking gas station. Yeah. And those videos went viral, and it was like, I don't even know who this is, but I know these labels are always straight, and they turn the label straight.
And if you walk into First Form HQ,
everything's straight.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah.
And that's a standard that started with an individual and radiated outward. You can walk in that facility and not have a clue about what's going on, but if you go work out in that gym, you're going to put your dumbbells back. Not only are you going to put your dumbbells back, but the numbers are going to be
face the right direction.
Vertical. You know what I mean? And when you go grab an energy drink and all of them are like perfectly at you, you're not shoving your hand in there. Like you're like, whoop. Yep. And then the one that comes behind it, you're like,
Yep.
And it's funny because when I was first introduced to that culture, I didn't have all of those qualities down yet. And I remember like being in the locker room, I was an athlete for the first time. I'm meeting everybody, I'm very good friends with Andy now, but I barely knew him back then. And I was like in the bathroom washing my hands, and I was like, just like threw some water in my hair, and like the guy next to me, and there was like water all over. Right. And the guy next to me is like, grabs a paper towel and he cleans his whole area. And I was like, oh yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
You know what I mean? Like, but that stuck with me not only when I'm there, but like when I'm at home too.
Oh yeah.
But stuff like that, it seems so little and minute, and people don't think about it. But like, you want to change the world. It's literally that.
Wipe
like,
the fucking sink
wipe
down.
the fucking sink down, dude. Like,
and people need to realize
turn the energy drink face forward and change the world.
Yep.
And we overcomplicate these things,
because
we think that they're bigger than we think. We're so much smaller, and so it's like, what does it matter if I don't?
And it's easy to keep that level once you have it. Like, it's real easy. Like, we've been there a couple times last year working out. And like, if my gym now, like, the weights are not the way it is at first form.
But when that's a very hard standard to keep.
But when you're at force form and you realize like, oh, all it really takes is me putting this back and
literally 2
turning
seconds.
it a tiny bit.
A little bit
even
of
less than a
intention.
second probably. Just think like, it's that level of excellence when the team and like you are committed to it is actually manageable. It's not difficult to keep. But if it's like, if you're just only doing it sometimes, and this is why the personal excellence, like, you have to get to that excellent level.
There's never a point where you kick your feet
it's
up.
easy to keep it. And people are like, oh, that's unobtainable, that's crazy, that's OCD. And it's like, well, not really. Like, it's just same level of effort.
Take a picture of the inside of your house and show it to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I would like to know a little bit about what you're doing now. Like we talked beforehand, you're here going to Peak Nutrition, one of the first stores I helped James open back in the day, because you got a CBD thing, you got a TRT thing, and you're not doing Attila's Gym anymore.
No.
Right?
When I ran for Congress, that wasn't the best idea I ever had.
Cool experience.
I had to try it.
Yeah.
I had the notoriety at the time, and like on the back end of what was going on at the gym, it was like, I didn't want to, it was like, well, what else can I do now, right? Because as the story was kind of coming to a sleepy, last couple chapters, I hated feeling like the American people were always like on the defensive, right? Like we were never on battle footing. We were always running to the fire, right? Like, it's like, oh, they're trying to, teach our kids about, sex. We got to get there by tomorrow, and we got to organize for the meeting. And like, you'll get people to show up, but like, they're not really ready to dig their heels in because the enemy already has. And I was just so tired of seeing that because it happens everywhere in all facets of life. So I was like, all right, I'll run for Congress. Learned a lot. We ran a good campaign. Learned that the political world is much worse than I even thought it was then. And that's when I really got my introduction to like hating on the right too. Because like up until then, I'm like, these are my people. And then like I saw the inner workings of the GOP, where the GOP actively worked against me in the primary because they wanted the guy who they knew was just going to do what he was told. Didn't really have any strong opinions either way. It was really whatever the GOP wanted. And so they worked against me and whatever. After that, I left Attila's, had a son.
Congrats.
And thank you. And moved up my family to Florida. I kind of had enough of Jersey. I wanted my son to grow up somewhere different. My parents lived in Florida, so I ultimately settled down there in North Florida. And there was a period of time where I was kind of like, what next? Like, what am I going to do next? I got involved originally with a company called Summit Rejuvenation. Started out, the owner had messaged me during COVID, like a lot of people did, and we had a conversation, but I, got lost in the memory bank somewhere for me. And he messaged me somewhere on the back end, and I wasn't super happy about leaving the gym. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was something that, it had sort of run its course. So dealing with a lot of frustration and really not knowing what I was going to do next. And he just reached out and he was like, hey man, like, just checking in on you. Hope everything's good. My offer still stands. And I didn't know what it was, but I read back up and he was like, hey, I run a TRT clinic. Love what you guys are doing. We support you. We donated to you. If I can ever help you out, like I know at the time, before COVID, I was doing strongman and stuff and I haven't competed since, but he's like, I know you do strength sports and stuff. You ever want me to run your blood work, dude, just let me know. Like it's my way of thanking you. And at the time, as a result of all the COVID stuff, training like crap for years, the stress, I had slid very far from where I was. And more than anything, I felt like crap. I was kind of like self-medicating, and I was just like, I guess I'll just do a little bit more test.
As we do.
That worked when I was like 27. So, I felt like crap, and I turned my protocol over to him. He got me some blood work and changed just a couple things very, very quickly, and really, really took the time to sit down and educate me. You have different levels of knowledge when it comes to that stuff, and there's like a basic bro knowledge that's like really bad, but it's just like the standard for most people who try it. Yeah. And I was like maybe slightly above that. So he took the time to educate me, changed a couple things in my protocol, significantly lowered the amount of testosterone I was on, introduced me to things like microdosing, explained the process behind it. And I was just blown away. Within a couple weeks, I felt just wildly different. And I was really, really impressed. So I started just kind of referring people to him, and, they're based out in St. Louis. So I, chatted a lot with them, and ultimately we had a dinner one night. We were having a steak, and, by the end of the conversation, we shook hands and agreed that I would come on to launch the telehealth network. We were 4 locations in St. Louis originally, doing men and women's, because a lot of people don't understand that testosterone is good for women too. Yep. Men's and women's hormones, peptides, blood work, stuff like that. I was just really impressed with the process and the foundation that these guys had in the business. We launched the telehealth. I signed in January of 2023, built the telehealth network out over 4 months. We turned the lights on in April, and we've been wildly successful since. And it's cool because it's another. I always like the health industry because you get to help people. Yeah. Like whether you're training, whether you're coaching, whatever it is. Sure. It's cool to get paid to make people's lives better. Yeah. Because it doesn't stop there. Their life continues whether they're with you or not, taking the things that they've got from you. And it goes on. And I've always loved that. So yeah, so we do that. We're expanding. We're going to be opening up a facility in Florida, probably a couple after that. And awesome. Things are really good. It's a fun business to be in. Again, it's fun helping people. There's all sorts of stuff. It's not just about low testosterone. Yeah. We have guys that have serious relationship issues as a result of the way they feel, because these guys, most of the medical industry, you go to your primary care doctor and they'll say, hey, I feel like crap, and they might run your blood work. They'll probably give you a hassle for it.
There's some Zoloft.
Yeah, exactly. They'll run you some tests, and your test will come back low, and because it's within that 300 to 800 range, which isn't a medical range, that's an average of where we're at now. And it's based on what the insurance companies will pay for. So you get these guys where the answer they get is, you're just getting older. And it's like, dude, he's 34.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he's not retiring.
He's 34. He's got a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah. Retirement's 65.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Oh, so he just feels like shit for the rest of his life. Like this guy's drinking 5 energy drinks a day to get to noon.
Yeah.
And when he gets home, his wife doesn't know why he feels like this, because she has her own hormones, but she doesn't understand why he's tired, why his libido's in the basement, why, he has no interest in his children because he's just emotionally not there. Right. All these things. So it's really fun to get to be a part of fixing stuff like that. And it's usually super simple. Yeah. And giving people something that they should have access to. Like I'm not a big fan of all medicine, but Western medicine has some clear benefits. Sure. We've got a lot of really bad actors, and a lot wrong with the healthcare system, but like there's a lot of really awesome things that you can do with the medical technology we have, and to make your life that much better with something so simple. Everybody should have access to that, or at least at the very least, access to the education on if they want to do it or not.
Totally.
So yeah, I got involved with that. It's coming up on 2 years now.
Nice.
That's fun. Having a lot of fun with it. Got involved with Recovery CBD in the same way. Leo is my partner at Recovery CBD. He was actually at Veterans Outreach workout. Started Recovery CBD right before COVID, and it sort of shot his business plan dead in the water. But he didn't give up on it. He built a very, very small but strong company and didn't get ahead of himself. And the CBD industry is funny because, a couple of years, a decade or so ago now, when CBD first came out, it flooded the market. And then the market just collapsed because most of the companies that came, It's just somebody with some money who thinks they're going to double up real quick.
Trying to cash in. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had the availability of the product everywhere from like the gas station to, a physical therapy office, but the education for the customers was like not there. And the company was sort of built off of that. The product was built off of the problems everybody else had. One of the things was people don't understand what a little bit of THC means, and for some people that's a no right away. Right. If you're, law enforcement, first responder, military, CDL driver, and even if you're adverse to it, like you can't explain to the old lady who has arthritis why she should use CBD when there's THC in it, when she doesn't understand that she's not going to get high from it. Right. So that was one of the big...
Explaining it to my mother.
Yeah. And it's like, you can explain it all you want, but like they still have their feelings about it, and you're not going to break that wall down. A lot of companies failed as a result of that. So Leo built the company kind of step by step like that. And I came in, sort of did the same thing, helped using my platform, by what we did during COVID. I built up a lot of trust with people, so, and you can squander that very quickly, but I was very selective about what I got into. So that's another one, Recovery CBD. And back home in St. Augustine, I own a local fence company, which is pretty fun.
All over the place.
So, it's cool. It's diverse. But I've always loved business. Yeah. Like business is fun. And being somebody, I told you my horror story of being fired from like what was my dream job at the time. Business was always a way for me to build the life that I wanted. And not have to play by anybody else's rules. Like I not only did I want to sign my paychecks, but I wanted to be in control of how much they were, and I wanted to be in control of what I was selling and not pushing something else that like I kind of believed in, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, when I was personal training at 24 Hour Fitness, I'm selling $120 an hour personal training sessions. When I launched my business, I was charging $30 an hour. And my business, in terms of where it brought me, was wildly more successful than if I had stayed at 24 hours pushing somebody else's product. So that was always what drew me to business. And it doesn't matter like what you can have a business in anything, and there's infinite ways to get involved. But for me, it's always been really, really tied to wanting to be in control of my own life. We saw that even during COVID. People couldn't say stuff because they'd get fired. I don't ever want to be in that position where I'm not allowed to voice my opinion, or I have to pretend like a lie is the truth just so I can feed my family. So that's been my mission going forward. And I do that not only, for my benefit, but I want to inspire. I try to only focus on men, and talking to men. I want to inspire other men to do that, because I know what it's done for me, and there's I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of guys who don't know where they should go next. And I always, I'm like, you got a job or what? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you like it? And most of the time it's a no. Right. And I always ask like, well, what do you want to do? And I want to push people to that, because that's what this country was built by people who worked for themselves. At one point, it was pretty much all self-employed, whether they worked on their own and people paid them for their work, but they weren't tied to anything. Right. Yep. Or they had their own businesses. And now we're in a very different place where, small business makes up 10% of the country. And I think that's an important, and I learned that a lot from Andy as well. I mean, Andy's somebody who taught me that. I mean, that's a guy who didn't really, have a head start in life. He had sort of an average life growing up, not a whole lot of money, and built something to where not only is he good, but he's able to provide value and pay people. And, like that's it's awesome. It's cool. It's such a cool, it's such a cool thing to be able to do. So I never want to, I don't ever want to retire. I want to be involved in as many different things as I can, because I want to learn. Every new business I'm a part of, I learn from. I'm learning a lot. I didn't know shit about building fences. I just know how to scale. You know what I mean? My partner builds the fences, and we got crews and stuff now. But I found a guy who, my partner at Defense, has been in the fence business for years, but he's only ever been by himself, Because sometimes it's hard to make the jump, especially in like the trades, to go from you being good at construction or whatever it is to having a business that does it. And that's a big jump for a lot of guys, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But it's very possible. It's just, you got to see more people doing it and take the chance, so that's been like a big part of my mission now, is not only for myself, but to show it to other guys and say, like, you want what I have, I'm doing all right. But there's a lot of guys who are doing way better than me, but I'm catching up to them. And if you start something today, in a couple of years, you're going to be in my position, bringing guys up under you.
Yeah.
And very few people I know who are in business for themselves in whatever capacity, whether it's like a side hustle, whatever, they tend to be very happy and fulfilled and well-rounded individuals, going back to that, because it takes personal excellence. It takes, when you write the paychecks, man, if you're not doing your best, you're not going to be doing what you can, so business is something that I've grown to like love and really, really deeply appreciate. And it's just, we'll see which one I get involved in. Maybe I'll get a pool cleaning business or something.
Yeah. Well, you're in Florida now, so maybe something with the sun. Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, dude, appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've been an inspiration to many and you will continue to do that, I'm sure, for many years. If there was one last thing that you would tell someone in general, I don't want to give you any topic or any category, anyone that's listening to this that made it all the way through after hearing all of our, rants about all these different topics and stuff, especially for someone that does want more out of life, what would you tell them?
Loosen up a little bit. First of all, loosen up a little bit. When I wrote my book, I chose not to just write about COVID and wrote more of like a memoir. Because it's super easy to tell the story about when you're successful, right? Or especially like when you're the hero. I could tell if you want me to, I could tell every detail of the COVID story, and you'll walk away being like, that dude's awesome.
Right.
And I want you to think that, but I don't want you to think that you can't be that. Right. So in my story or in my book, I talk about the worst thing I've ever done, and it landed me in prison, because so many of us walk around carrying something. Whether it's like failure, a big mistake, they've let people down, and you carry that and you tend to discount, again, going back to what you can do.
Yeah.
Like I didn't ever want anybody to ever hear my story and be like, I wish I could have did what that guy did, but I can't, because, like when I opened the gym, I had skeletons in my closet, and everybody around me knew them, but the whole world didn't, and I had to deal with that while doing something I knew was right, and it's just important to remember that. And that was like the whole point of the book, but it comes back to really just wanting more and not just saying it. For most of my life up until the decision of COVID was a series of like fuck ups. For a lot of reasons. And I was in that place where I didn't think I could be one of these, very successful guys. I never thought I would get there. And as soon as I just kind of like loosened up a little bit and stopped being so hard on myself for everything, and put myself out there a couple chances, I didn't think I could run a personal training business. Like I had no idea, but it was when I did it, I got that small win, and it was like, okay, what else? Oh, I can open a personal training studio now. I didn't think I could do that at one point.
Yeah.
And then I had a personal training studio that was so busy that I used to turn people away all the time.
Sure.
And I never thought I could own a gym, and I did. And I never thought I would run for Congress, and I did. I never thought I could, be an entrepreneur in 3 businesses, but I am. But I didn't get there by just taking a leap there. Right. I started with the really small steps that are really boring. Those days when I was a personal trainer, I was working my ass off. And nobody cared about me, and it was quiet, and it was dull, and it wasn't exciting. There was nothing to show off, but that's that's where it all fucking starts. Like right there, you know, and for anybody, especially young men who are trying to figure out what they want to do and where they want to go, doesn't matter as long as you are rock solid. Like focus on that more than anything, and then take a step. And if you take a misstep, take another one. And eventually you're going to start rising, you know, and there's no need to overcomplicate it. It's just that simple.
Yeah. All right, perfect. I think that's great.
Awesome.
Great advice.
Thank you.
So anyone listening, please share this with someone that needs to hear that.
Yep,
for sure.
Like Andy says, I'm not going to steal his thing. You know, don't be a host, share the show. But
share the show.
Yeah, for sure. But now that we've been doing this, we've had so many great guests on, like yourself, that are just given so much good value that it's like, hey, if you got something from this, chances are 1 or 5 or 10 people that also should hear this. So
absolutely.
If you could just share the show, please. All the places that people can find you are listed wherever they're listening to this thing, so they can click the link and go check out your CBD, check out your summit, TRT, check out the fence company if you're in Florida, all those things. So please support Ian. He's been great at supporting all sorts of people. So please go ahead and support him. And as always, you can go check out earnitall.com to see what we do. So thanks so much for being on, Ian. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, cheers.